Good morning, everybody. My name is the Sobre Boys Walifatsi. Together with Tsepang, last born, Khole, we are doing the show called the Big R Solution Sports Program. And then today we decided to invite Ntate Thulaganyo, who is the president of SAFPU. SAFPU is the union for the soccer players. So you know that we have just heard that Celtic has been sold, Real AM bought Celtics. And remember, in that process, you have people, all right? And then Mr. Thulaganyo, that is his interest, the employees, their condition, and so on and so on. So we want to find out what's happening. Tsepang, welcome to the show. Can you kindly greet the viewers before I welcome that Thulaganyo Gaoshubelwe?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Shabalala, and to you also, Mr. Thulaganyo, and to the viewers out there. I hope everyone is doing good, is okay, and hope everyone enjoys the show and with all the news that will be shared on this first episode of our show. Thank you very much.
I'm talking to Mr. Thulaganyo Gaoshubelwe. No, Gaoshubelwe. Yeah. Am I right in that line?
Gaoshubelwe.
Good. Gaoshubelwe. Menero, could you kindly greet the viewers this morning? And then, before we start.
Sobre, good morning to you. Good morning to Tsepang, and good morning to the to your listeners and your viewers. Importantly, I'm reminded of Lasbon Makroti when I heard you in church.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not too sure if he really does know Lasbon, or he was given the name Lasbon because of what he could do in the field. But yeah,
he's the youngest. He's the youngest in the team.
Oh, okay.
Having said that, is Lasbon Makroti still alive?
Well, I'm not very sure. It's
I hope
we'll
he's still alive.
Revert, we be hoping.
Yeah.
We hope.
Ntate Thulaganyo, I know that you are in the space of organizing the players into a union. Now, the first question that I want to find out, because not long ago, I was interviewing Kit Sitole. You know Kit Sitole?
Yeah.
Kit in arts and culture. That discussion led to us inviting Mr. Thembinkosi Mkhalipi from the Department of Labor to clarify some of the issues. One of the things that became glaring was organizing. It becomes a problem. Now, let me find out, you as SAFPU, don't you find it difficult to organize these players?
Look, our responsibility is to protect and defend the rights of the players. You are asking an important question. And referring to Brakit, of course, we've worked with them for quite a long time when he was still with KUSA, which was the Creative Workers Union of South Africa. Of course, they've had some challenges, given that, you've got some producers, you've got artists, sometimes they don't really are not worried about the collective, but it's about one individual and so forth. But of course, the question is, whether does the government, the Department of Labor, make it also possible, or can you just look at it? Because traditionally, you would have a situation where footballers, considered entertainers, and artists would not necessarily be organized. Now, as a result, when you come and organize, you fall into the very same, you are guided by the same constitution, same labor as expected. For an example, when you have a footballer, you're expected to be a worker if you are a president, if you are so and so. But is it really feasible and possible for you to do that? it becomes something else. But I think what makes it a bit easier for us is that we've got what we call the collective bargaining agreement with the league. But it was not easy from the beginning. We had to fight, and we fought, a good fight. And there is a very good understanding with the league that we ended up signing the collective bargaining agreement, where we can then sit and bargain with the clubs. And, we are also allowed in terms of the timing to go and visit the players at their workplaces. And we take care of currently professional footballers who are playing their trade in the DSTV Premiership as well as Latin Africa Championship. Of course, there we've got a cooperation agreement with SAFA. To that extent, we are then able to assist those who are playing at lower leagues, amateur football as ABC Mutsepe as well as AB. So yeah, we are dealing with those particular matters and hoping that at some point we'll extend to those varsities, be able to talk to them, be able to talk to school sport and all issues, in trying to solidify, making sure that everybody who plays football gets to understand their rights.
Now, because why I'm asking, is it difficult? I wonder whether these players, do they indicate that they're getting some intimidation from the club bosses or that kind of a thing? Or it's not difficult ever since you guys have a bargaining council now?
Look, I think the material conditions have really changed, to be honest, but there are clubs, where, players are still afraid to express themselves. But I think this thing boils down to the issue of education. When you look, in the past years, you would know that a lot of players who will be playing football would not necessarily have been through your school, your education, and so forth and whatnot. So they would rely specifically on those particular things. But of course, there would be people who want to take chances, intimidate, the players, and not necessarily even give the organization the time of day to have those discussions. But in terms of the Labor Relations Act, it allows us to do that. The CBA allows us for us to do that. The issue, it's more on education, like I said. It's very important that, with the players, we are able to say it. But most of these players, they do understand that there's a union and they do support the union fully because they understand that this organization, it is the vanguard, and this organization is the only organization that we do have agents in the space as well. The question is, what are their roles, or what is the role of the agents, and what is our role as an organization? When we negotiate collectively. But again, when we go to, let's say, deal with Bloemfontein Celtic issues or the Royal AM matters, we sit there and we talk to the managers to say, look, this is our interest. We want the players. Wherein some agents, of course, not all of them would do that, but we know of those who would put their interest before those of the players. To say, for an example, if the club says a player left with 2 years or so, you must terminate and all that. And sometimes the agents will encourage them. I remember when Highlands Park was being sold, there are some players who were encouraged to take, your 2 months, your 3 months, wherein they had a longer period. But it is so sometimes, because I still need to go back to Sobri FC and have a negotiation and take a last one to Sobri. So if I do not allow for Sobri FC to, fired or release Thulaganyo from his contract, therefore, as an agent, I may not be able to take a last one to that particular club. So that's what happens. But we are there, conscientizing them on a daily and being able to deal and address all those fundamental issues.
Okay. You know what you're going to do? Because today I want us to look at the Celtic sale Royal AM. And then I still have to have another interview with you, looking at this SAFPU and the role that you play, just like you're outlining correctly. If you can go to our YouTube, you'll notice that we had a interview, look at that one of Brakit first, and then also look the one that we did with Mr. Mukalipi. So that when we come back and talk, at least you have been informed by those 2 interviews, and we don't want to repeat what has been said there. Then we start to understand exactly what's happening. But I must say congratulations, because you guys have a bargaining chamber, which is quite good, because other unions are struggling to even form a bargaining chamber. I think that was the problem with that union where Brakit was in. But nevertheless, take us through what happened or what is happening in the situation of Royal AM and so on. We are not going to interfere. We'll allow you just to say, just give us information so that viewers out there, at least they know what's happening with the players. Let me leave it with you, because there's something very worrying, but maybe I'll ask later, whereby, if I'm not mistaken, whereby Robert Marawa gave a clip where Mr. Max Chabalala, was saying to players, from now on, go to Durban. We'll discuss about that at the later stage. There are some rumors that the technical staff were earning about how much? 1,005. But you'll tell us, but just feel free to tell us what's happening in this situation of Celtics, Royal AM.
Okay, I think we've always said as an organization, we are for investment in football, and we have challenged quite a number of people to come and invest in the game. But we've also said that we want an investment that's going to be pro-development of the game. The investment that will ensure that the players are not worse off after having invested. And I'm raising this fundamental point because we now know that it's very difficult to survive when you do not have sponsorship. And we will also address this issue of sponsorship, to the extent that when you look at rugby and cricket, you'll find that those people find a lot of sponsors go there because they are previously advantaged sponsors. But these previously advantaged companies and everybody do not want to put their money in football. That will then empower and develop the game and so forth. When you look at the names of rugby, you see there's Vodacom, there's Celsius, there's this and that, and so forth. But coming back to this particular issue of the Celtic players, we now know that Celtic has been sold. Celtic is transferred to Royal AM. But one of the things that we did as an organization in our discussions and engagements with the league was to ensure that what used to happen previously, where clubs will just buy a status and leave the players in limbo, doesn't happen anymore. And indeed, in our discussion and credit clause should find its expression within the handbook of the league also, that whoever buys a club or sells a club would do so as a going concern, meaning the liabilities and the asset would transfer to the new owner. And it was so because once that is done, our responsibility was to ensure that the contracts of the players are secured. Any employee, even last point, when he is to leave your company, first thing, if somebody comes and buy into your company, first thing that last born or anybody or any employee anywhere else, they would want to know is that their salaries or their contracts are secured. Yes. And to the extent that the contract is secured, it becomes better. And that's the part that we needed to deal with. And by the way, we're not only dealing with Celtic players here or former Celtic players. We're dealing with former Celtic players who are now Royal AM, who are in the DSTV Premiership. We are also dealing with players who were with Royal AM, which was in the Clear Africa Championship, who are now TTM as per the thing, as per the sales agreement. And now, all the players that belong to Celtics are legally, contractually, they are with Royal AM. So there is no, I mean, there is no way that these players will go and try at Royal AM. But let's say when they get to Royal AM or to TTM, and the club might say, look, you are surplus to requirements. We do not need you because, you know, a lot of these things could be subjective. We do not need you. We need player A as opposed to player B. Then go. And because we cannot honor your 2-year contract. It's very simple. The player would then have to say, it's okay. I hear you and I respect your decision. In as much as I want to play for you, I'm not going to force you to keep me in your team. But remember that there's a contract, and here's a contract. You need to comply with these contracts and its terms. If it's for 2 years, you need to do so. But if you don't want me here, you can always pay me out, then I will go. Then the two parties will have to sit and negotiate, because no single party can terminate the contract unilaterally. That's the first part. But secondly, let's assume that the club insists and they just fire you or they dismiss you unfairly. There's a breach of contract. We will then have every right to declare dispute with the dispute resolution chamber of the league, where our matter will be heard. We'll make our prayers that there's a contract. The contract has been unfortunately unlawfully terminated, and they will demand the balance of a contract. And to that extent, that's what we will definitely do, and the players will do. But there is also another element, that when the players get on the other side, they might say to them, we want to loan you to the other team. What we've advised the players to do is that they must make sure, because all players must sign registration forms, which registration forms would say you are a Royal AM player plying your trade in the DSTV, or Royal AM plying his trade on in the Premier Division. Therefore, they need to sign those things. And once they have signed those, then Royal AM, with the players' consent, of course, can decide to loan them. But no player should just be agreed to a loan agreement, without necessarily having had a sight of the terms, having seen it written in loan agreements. Because if you do that and you are left with a few years, you might end up having terminated your own contract and signing a 1-year contract. So this is where we are, and we have discussed all those issues about the sale. But there are also these matters where there is an issue of relocation. We have said to the extent that the players will be relocating, would have expected, and which is expected in that it's a practice in every walk of life, every employment, that when you move, you are able to engage with your employer to say, where are we? Firstly, they'll give you a proper time period for you to prepare. You prepare family and so forth. Let's take the example of the clip that was sent to us, which we have had thing where players were simply told, look, I am done. I've got nothing left to do with this club. You guys must leave today. I mean, imagine that I would imagine that there were some players probably who've got families, needed to talk to their families, needed to go fetch your kid at school, sit them down and talk to them, about all those issues. So all those things were very, very important and fundamental. And it could not have been right that those players were simply told to just pack up and go. We have condemned in the strongest possible way that kind of treatment that took place and that happened, to say this is not how players or any person or any individual ought to be treated, because those are two things. And we said we're taking this matter up with the relevant people, as much as they have said to us, maybe probably after 2 games, they would allow the players to go back, given that they were pressed for time and so forth. They will allow them to go back and, prepare better for the relocation. We said, it's okay, but that is not the way. There are better ways of dealing with issues. There are better ways of addressing matters. But players cannot be treated in a manner in which you know, this group of players, you know, of professional players were treated by Celtics. It can't, it doesn't arise. I mean, we really need to talk to that. But thirdly, we've addressed also this issue. We said there is another issue that people are complaining to say the heritage, the culture, the tradition of Celtic is gonna go, will be gone. Why sell Celtic? And this brings us to the point of where we say the issue of sponsorship becomes paramount. If we have proper sponsorship, people sponsoring and putting money, you know, into the game, we may not be able to find this situation like this. Because I would tell you that, I can tell you that I would believe that this is not the first and last situation that we're finding ourselves in. Because, I mean, for the past few years, clubs have been selling, you know, under the pretext or under the pronouncement that they are broke, they cannot do this and stuff and all that. But however, that talks to the issue of the ownership. Supporters are saying they were not informed. Stakeholders saying, but how can you do this? But I'm saying, maybe it's time that as South Africans, we must have an honest discussion to say, if we want to be part and parcel of these clubs, what can and cannot do? I mean, one of the things, if we organize ourselves or the supporters organize themselves and say, we probably want a stake in a club, but this is the X amount that we are going to put towards achieving that particular goal, so that we have a say. I mean, the way football is done here and the way it's run, it's a bit different from how it's run everywhere else probably in, let's say, in Europe or somewhere in the continent, where it becomes it's owned by a number of stakeholders, supporters included. So if we can maybe and have a discussion about that, the issue of financial fair play, if we want to talk about that, the question is, who's going to be footing the bill? Who must deal with that? How do we address the issues of fair play? Do we have a government or a sports department that would then come and say, we are going to try and help you and resolve on the issues of leveling the playing fields and so forth? So there are quite a number of issues that need to be considered in dealing with this particular matter. But to the extent that there was that 24 kind of command for the players to less than 24 hours to go, we reject that kind of approach. We reject that kind of treatment going forward, and hoping that all things considered and the powers that be will be able to address and attend to those matters.
You know, I heard Dr. Ivan Koza. He was in pains trying to explain what efforts as the executive of the league they took in trying to make sure that this is amicable. And thanks enough, he even mentioned you guys, SAFPU, that you assisted, you know, because one of the things that he mentioned, he said one option that they tried, they would always say, anybody in the family who's prepared to take over, if there is no such, anybody in the area, so that the team doesn't go out of the area. If there is no such, and then his question was, what should we do? Which is a genuine question, all right? But I want to find out, because the rules, I think, have been done by these all 22 teams. Is it not possible, I don't know what the rule says, that going forward, people who are buying teams, the measures are so stringent in such a way that you have people like who just came in 3-4 years down the line, this is what happens. Those people are banned for life. Because if this thing happens, you are playing with the emotions of people. And the emotions of people are very dangerous. And it's not only about the money that they earn, they have families and so on, pride and so on. I don't know, I'm just throwing it in. Don't you think that it's one of the subjects that should be brought to the table? I hear what you are saying in terms of the sponsor coming in, but at the same time, I'm sure the sponsors are also saying, how do we sponsor a disorganized organization? Because also that is some of the concerns. Yes.
You see, I think we've got a responsibility to try and do the best that we can do in protecting the brand, as well as contributing so that our children tomorrow are able to inherit, you know, the very same entity that has given us so much joy over the years. And we need to guard it jealously, but engage and be honest and frank with each other, you know, when dealing with these particular issues, considering all matters. I hear what you're saying, and I'll be one of the first people to say, yes, let us do that. But what are the realities? If you have a team, I buy a team, and you end up being, you know, people can be bankrupt, be liquidated. I mean, the pandemic as we know it now, COVID-19, has demonstrated to us that it's very, very possible that you can be bankrupt. I mean, when you look into the EPL, for an example, you find that there are clubs that are always under administration. Maybe those are the questions that we must check and say, can't or shouldn't we, as part of the of the solutions that we want to provide, maybe have clubs, you know, put under administration. But if they are under administration, who then pays? Or should we be saying that if the club doesn't pay, or the club gets sold out and they go background, they cannot do anything in terms of addressing the issues of the players, can't we then take the probably can look at the issue of the grant and so forth? But realistically speaking, are we able to get to that? Realistically speaking, finances and everything considered, can we do that? Can we say, here was this man who had for the past 3 years or 4 years worked very well, paid his players well, and unfortunately was bankrupt, he could not do anything, but now he's come back again, he's got money and so forth. But I am for the stringent measures that would say, let us look at the background, let us look at financial issues, let us have a process of due diligence and ensure that all these other issues are dealt with, all these other issues are attended, and make it a bit difficult for people not to come and just go in. There must be serious reasons for them to leave football. But of course, if there are investments, if there are potential investors, if there are people who want to invest and improve our football and ensure that players become better and they are not worse off as they were in the previous employment, we will definitely appreciate that. We will be able to say, here is this team, you know, which considers, take into consideration the supporters, that mama that sells in the stadium to make the money for her kids to go to school and so forth. So all those measures, Shabalala, I think they're important, and we need to sit down, because I don't think it's just a solution that will be given today. But fundamentally, we strongly believe that the issues of sponsorship plays a very important role. Yes, we need to improve administratively when it comes to other teams or certain things, so that we are up there and top there in terms of how we can do things. But with that also comes the issue that we raised earlier on of the ownership, to say what kind of ownership we want. Do we want a situation where Thulaganyo is able to buy a club and own it by himself? Or do you want a situation where Thulaganyo buys a club, takes 51%, and gives 40% to Sobri, take 2% and give to somebody else? Is it the kind of ownership? And if we're saying yes, that's the one, where is the money? Would we be able to raise all those issues? So this is very interesting. It gives us something to really talk about, but we need to look for lasting solutions that will assist our football.
I wonder whether our teams, have they thought of exploring the avenues of IPO, initial public offering, you know, on the security exchange, you know, to raise funds? I don't know whether, I'm sure a lot of teams can do that, so that, the ownership model, as you say, it's very important. And how do you raise funds? So probably those are some of the things that they should think of, one. Secondly, are we going to say, let's look what is happening in Europe now, whereby we see the guys from Arab with a lot of money from the oil coming in and buying teams in France or England, the guys from Russia, China. Are we also open to that avenues of other investors coming in to our football? I'm just asking. Then those are some of the ideas. You are right. It's a debate that should be taken up, and then with all stakeholders coming up and debating, come up with ideas.
No, absolutely. Unfortunately, some of these things I may not be able to talk to, but safe to say, those are ideas that can be, of course, threshed, because before you can even provide a solution, you need to dig down and say, what is the challenges that are confronting us? And once you have made that particular analysis, whether it's in the form of a baseline study or it becomes an internal document that comes from the league, then you are able to engage to say, yes, indeed, this is our shortcomings. That will this model work in a third world country? Will this model work in South Africa, for an example? Or what's going to happen? Because that culture, heritage, and tradition also speak to these things. They speak to the issues of ownership, to say, if we go this route, can we go to this route? When Trevor came in 96 and 97 season, Trevor Phillips, may his soul rest in peace. He changed quite a number of things, and together with the league, they worked very hard to be where we are. And the question is, what is it that we need to do as all these other stakeholders to ensure that we preserve the current product that we have, and importantly, even make it much better, such that it's able to take care of those footballers, who on week in, week out are out there playing and ensuring that it reaches everybody. During COVID-19, when people were stressed and football opened and we started having conversations, we started talking about things. But you also must think about the players themselves, because they are challenged and we need to deal with issues of mental health and so forth and whatnot. And would be very happy as well that during these transfers from players, from former Bloemfontein players, former Royal players, be provided with some psychologists to deal with issues of mental health, so that they can then be able to cope with the situation. You can imagine that there would have been probably trialists, and those trialists, what happens to them?
As a last one, because I'm mindful of your time, because you told that you need to move on to the next commitment. I was saying this thing of IPO. I was lucky enough years back, I can't remember which year, and my first book was one of the best-selling book in a shop called Fascination. And then I had an opportunity that Ray Ackerman, the owner of Pick n Pay, had just released a book called Four Legs of the Table. And then he was launching that book. So I was invited as one of the people who the book was selling well. And then it was a gesture from them to be there and share stage with him. And one of the things, fascinating thing that he shared when he was outlining how he started the Pick n Pay store. He started with about 2 or 4 shops, in Cape Town. Then he said, as he was feeling the squeeze, the pressure from the big retailers who wanted to squeeze him, then the route that he took the IPO. That enabled him to raise funds. That was in 1966. And that was when I was born in that year, in 1966. So that gave him a very good foundation and a strong position. So that is why I'm saying maybe our team should explore this, because I was also looking at a PSG for that matter. And then I realized that Michael Jordan the famous basketball player, has a 5% ownership of PSG. You know how these Arab guys. So I was thinking that maybe even in our case, people now started to think outside the box. You know, unlike may soul rest in peace, this is my team. I know he loves football, but they need also to be shown all these different models and say, guys, in order to survive this storm, how do we do it? But at the same time, remember, football is our passion. That's all what we have. Well, we are happy to see that Dr. Motsepe is coming in from the mine. Mr. Zungu has come in. Mr. Rupert has come in with Stellenbosch. So we are happy to see that. But I'm also thinking that some other teams, they also have to think outside the box. I don't know. What's your take on that one? That will be the
the minutes that I have, I think you are quite correct. However, like I said, I think these discussions need to take place, empower one another, and be able to, to the extent that we can avail and meet with clubs on, advisory to say, guys, this is what can work and stuff and all that. That would be fun. But it goes back to the issues of ownership that you are raising, to say to what extent are we open to that and so forth, considering all things, considered. I think we should be able to reach and become a better footballing nation.
Sir, thank you very much for your time. I know that we are rushing for something else. And then Lastborn also wanted to ask questions, but unfortunately, because of your time, so we could not have that. But nevertheless, we are still going to engage you. We still have to discuss and explore all these avenues. So there is a whole lot to discuss. But thank you for gracing our show. I really appreciate it. First thing that I want to mention, the first time when I called you, you were not so difficult. You were quick, and then you responded positively, because sometimes people are difficult to deal with. And then I say, keep it up. It should not only happen to us, especially when you say, I'm a YouTube channel, you get difficulties. Why YouTube channel? I want the traditional mainstream media to be the only ones who interview us. But I appreciate that. And then keep up the good work. And then if we see something very good, we must commend it, I was saying to Fatuwane of PSL, he's very young, but the young man is so efficient. And it's rare to see that efficiency. And then, and once you see it, you must say, hey, you know what? This is efficiency, it must be encouraged. So I'm saying thank you very much for agreeing to this interview.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to air our views. And to the extent that we will be invited again, we'll be able to engage further. Lastborn must not worry. He must know that we will have the time. Let him, like his name, Tsepa. So yes, we will, at appropriate time, will be able to engage. But thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Lastborn, we'll be doing the next show at the lunch hour, not long.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.